Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my top 10 12th Doctor stories ranking. And as it's a final video for the 12th Doctor, I decided to wear a TARDIS t-shirt. Unfortunately, I do not have a t-shirt or shirt of any kind with the 12th Doctor on it. I've got one featuring the first 11 Doctors, not the War Doctor though, and also one featuring the first, 4th, 5th, and 10th Doctors, and also one with the 13th, but not with the 12th or War or Fugitive Doctors. So yeah, so I decided to wear this one instead. I could have worn my usual shirt, which is actually hanging up there, but for this video, I thought I'd wear something special. So, the top 10 12th Doctor stories. These are my 10 favourite stories from the 12th Doctor's era, and yeah, that's basic. That's basically it. It could be any story from series 8, 9, or 10, or seasons 34, 35, 36. So, on to the rankings, starting with my honourable and dishonourable mentions. Starting with the dishonourable mention first, and I think you all know what this is. This is the worst individual story and the worst individual episode of the Revive series, and one of the worst of the show. Hellbent from season 35, aka series 9. I've already done a rant on this, and I've already gone into it in my series 9 review ranking. But Hellbent sucks. It sucks so bad. There's barely a story. It starts off great, if a bit slow, then it just goes downhill as soon as the Doctor decides to bring back Clara, and then the story's all about Doctor and Clara. It kind of diminishes Clara's fate in Face the Raven, and it also makes Heaven Sent and what the Doctor went through and learnt in that story and getting over his grief. It comes all to nothing, and it sucks. And I don't think we needed to shield her in this story. I can see why she was in Face the Raven, but after that, I think that's it. Maybe she could be a recurring character later on down the line if they wanted to do more stories with her or make a cameo or something. But in this story, I think it was kind of pointless. I could see why she's at the end of the universe, but I don't think it was needed to go to the end of the universe in the first bloody place. Also, the Doctor goes against everything he stood for, past, present, and future, for absolutely no reason. And he kills the General just because he can't bear to let Clara go. Okay, I can understand the Doctor not bearing to let Clara go in spite of getting over his grief in the previous episode, but that being said, he goes way too far, and it's not what the Doctor would do. Not even Capaldi's Doctor. Not only is this Capaldi's Doctor's worst story, but it's probably the lowest point the Doctor has ever gone. And it's a massive disservice to not just the 12th Doctor, but to the Doctor as a whole. And yeah, it's just it's terrible. I go into my opinions more into detail about what happens in the review / rant and in the series 9 ranking, but let's just say this is a shit story. The only thing that kind of prevents it from being the worst story of all time is that I think there's at least 2 more stories that I just despise even more. I just can't stand them. Whilst this one, I can at least sit through it. I can at least tolerate watching the episode, even if I can't really tolerate what's in the episode. That's why it's not the worst of all time, but it is definitely the worst of the new series. Honourable mention, on the other hand, also goes to another Series 9 or Season 35 story, and that's my least favourite story by Jamie Matheson, but because it's a Jamie Matheson story, it's automatically good, at worst. The Girl Who Died. Yeah, I thought this was a good episode. Introduced the Shielder well, and it's definitely the best of her episodes. And I think establishing her as a character was done pretty well. The Maya were okay villains, although they are just another warrior race. But I think the guy playing Odin was really good, and the whole training these people to fight against the Maya plan was a good story idea. I thought that was done pretty well, and yeah, some pretty great stuff in this episode. Okay, so moving on to the top 10 itself, starting with number 10. This time we're starting with a story from season 34, or series 8. And this is the 5th episode of the series, Time Heist. Now, I'm not sure how many people would put this one on their top 10 12th Doctor stories ranking, but personally, I think this is a pretty great episode from Series 8. It was the most enjoyable episode of the first half of the series, and it was a ton of fun. Steve Thompson redeems himself after the mediocre The Curse of the Black Spot in Series 6 and the train wreck of Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS in Series 7. But thankfully, here he has redeemed himself. This might be partly down to Stephen Moffat, but maybe Thompson has written the majority of the plot. Regardless of who did what, it's still a great episode and a ton of fun. The villain isn't that particularly amazing, but Keely Hawes does a good job in the role, and the Teller creatures are imaginatively designed, and I like the reveal about it. And there's two supporting characters who team up with the Doctor and Clara are also pretty good. And I think the idea of a time bank heist is really cool. That they're using time to help them in this bank heist. It's a pretty cool one. And they're not just going after money. The two other characters are getting something that they need, and the Doctor and Clara are going to rescue the other telecreature and get these two creatures to a new home. It's a really great episode. It's not amazing, but it's still a ton of fun, and definitely one of Series 8's better episodes. Number 9, and this is another one I don't think many people would actually put on a top 10 12th Doctor stories ranking. You've got 36 stories. I don't think these two are ones you would see in the top 10 that often. Sometimes maybe even lower down. Maybe not the ultimate bottom, but certainly maybe 20 to 25 ish. This one maybe 25 to 30. This one is the 2016 Christmas special, and it's the only Christmas special on this list from season 36, or series 10 technically. It is the return of Dr. Mysterio. As I said in my previous ranking, the Series 10 ranking, this is easily the best Christmas special since Voyage of the Damned. Sorry, those who really like or love The Next Doctor or The End of Time, or any of the Moffat specials prior to this. But in honesty, this is my favourite Christmas special since Voyage of the Damned. I would probably say it's my third favourite Christmas special overall. And it's just a fun romp of adventure. I like the superhero angle they're going with. The supporting characters are pretty good, although I am disappointed that the villains escape at the end and we don't see a following story with them. I went into this in the previous ranking that it was a shame we didn't get a third story with them, because that's seemingly where it was going to go. We could have gotten a third story in series 10 or the following Christmas special, and honestly, that would have been better than Twice Upon a Time. But as it stands, it's just two stories, and the idea's kind of been left hanging. But this episode is still a really fun and adventurous story, and it's still a great episode. Also, like the emotional side that the Doctor's having following the passing of River Song, and Nardal starting to develop into a more mature character, which he will continue to do so, and more notably in Series 10, especially by the time we get to Oxygen, which will be on this list, but later. Before that, we've got some more Series 10s to talk about, starting with number 8. Now, this one is a well-regarded one from the Capaldi era, maybe not an ultimately popular one, but it's still one that's generally liked. From Series 10, Season 36, it is Thin Ice. So Thin Ice, again, as I mentioned in the previous ranking, this is a good one, a very good one actually. We've had a really good time with it. Negative points: the villain sucks. He's the worst villain of Series 10, and the fish creature, you needed to have a bit more. We needed to care a bit more about it. The kid characters are okay, but the best thing about this one is the Doctor and Bill's interactions and the character growth between each other and interacting with the setting and how great that Regency London looks on and the Frost Fairs. It's a really great idea. It's also interesting that we haven't done a Frost Fair story before. It's pretty interesting, and it's pretty cool to go to Regency Britain. Although I can understand if people mistake it for Victorian Britain, and I am glad the historical stories do get away from the 19th century after this story with Eaters of Light moving back to 2 AD, I think, or was it 102 AD? But definitely the Roman times, and then series 11 and 12 try to be a bit more obscure with their historical stories, as well as ones that are that would put our characters into danger. But Thin Ice definitely handles its historical topics very well and its historical setting very well. Sticking with series 10, number 7 is the my next favorite episode of the series following this one. And funny enough, this episode and the next two on this list are the same as on the series 10 ranking. Not the same places, but it's Thin Ice, then the next one, then the one afterwards. It's in the same order, and these episodes were actually broadcast in this order as well. So starting off with Thin Ice. Next up is number 7, Knock Knock. I apologise for not doing that in the Series 10 ranking, unless it annoyed you, in which case I apologise for doing it here and in the review. So Knock Knock, it's a really creepy, really scary, atmospheric episode with some great supporting characters, with David Suchet as my favourite guest actor of Series 10, excluding John Sim, or promoting him to main character status, same for Mark Gatiss in the finale and Twice Upon a Time respectively. Then David Suchet is my favourite guest actor. He is fantastic as the landlord, who is a great character. I really enjoyed the story that went around him and Eliza, and how it built up as a kind of a horror story to begin with, but then a kind of a character drama later on. It was a great setup, and as mentioned, I enjoyed seeing Bill's friends on screen, and they were fun characters. Some of them didn't get as much to do, but fair enough for the point of the story. Actually, some of them actually got quite a bit to do before they were taken. So that was pretty interesting. And number 6 on my list is the episode that followed Knock Knock, Oxygen, also from Series 10. Here we go, the first Jamie Matheson episode on this list after the honourable mention. This would be my third favourite of his, but we've got more Matheson goodness coming up from Series 8, as the Series 9 one was the honourable mention. But yeah, I think Oxygen is another fantastically scary, creepy episode like Knock Knock. This time taking it into space and having a warning against space capitalism, but doing a really scary and clever horror story around it and being pretty creepy. And also the whole science stuff with space is handled really well, much better than Kill the Moon. And it's just a really great episode, really well made, and just stunning. Matheson just knocks it out of the park for the 4th time. And whilst Girl Who Died, as I mentioned, isn't as great as the other 3 he wrote, and just manages to miss out on being on this top 10 list, it's still another great episode. And so Matheson is definitely one of the best writers of the Capaldi era, if not the best, on a general basis. And I would love him to come back. I'm not expecting him to come back for Series 13, but maybe Series 14. And for the people saying he should be showrunner, well, he's done enough episodes, in my opinion, to secure that spot. I'm wondering how much of a producing experience he's had, or showrunning experience. But, you know, script-wise, he would be a good choice for showrunner. And yeah, I completely understand why people would want him to be the showrunner after these 4 episodes that he did. And this is only the second one I'm talking about, and the other 2 are coming up later on this list. In fact, we've got another one right now with number 5. And that is the first of his 2 Series 8 stories that was broadcast. It was actually technically the second one he wrote. Like with Neil Cross in Series 7, he wrote one, and then he was asked to do one that would come earlier in the series. With Neil Cross, he wrote Hyde first, and then came back to do Rings of Akaten, which was then broadcast before Hyde. With this story, Matheson wrote Flatline, and then he was asked to write the episode that came before that, which is my number 5 choice for this list, Mummy, on the Orient Express. This was a brilliant episode. Matheson's definitely putting his horror stuff into the story, but it's not quite as scary as Oxygen or even Flatline. But it's definitely got the creepy mummy creature coming after the Doctor and Clara. I actually like having the 2 characters split up and talk to other characters. Clara hanging out with Maisie, whilst the Doctor is trying to solve the mystery of the mummy. And it's a pretty great dynamic. We are following up from the breakup from Kill the Moon, but I think it handles that really well. The last hurrah situation between the two characters before ultimately Clara going, fuck it, let's just carry on. Moving on to number 4, and we go back to Series 9 for the first time since our honourable mention. Yeah, this is the first Series 9 story to appear in the top 10 list with my number 4 choice. But whilst there aren't many Series 9 stories on this list, just 2 actually, plus the honourable mention and the dishonourable mention, but the ones that are on here are peak level stories, and this is the first Under the Lake and Before the Flood. This is probably Toby Whithouse's best Doctor Who script. It is so creepy, so imaginative, so great, fun, enjoyable. Great villain in the form of the Fisher King. Even if he doesn't do a huge amount, but he definitely has a presence, a great screen presence. And the ghosts are pretty great villains. I like the supporting cast. I think they're pretty fun, and it's interesting that we do one episode focuses just on the base, and then the second episode decides to split the characters, and half of them go back in time to see what's gone wrong, whilst the others stay on the base. It's a pretty great story and really enjoyable, and I prefer Capaldi's Doctor's characterization in this story to what it was in the previous one. I think the early Series 9 performance does start to get better, so he will have a better characterization in the later episodes of the series. The exception is probably parts of the Zygon 2-parter, probably the parts where he's not being serious, when he's trying to be all cool and down with the kids sort of stuff. That's probably where it goes back down a little bit, but then peaks back up again later on, which we will get to again later. It's a shame Toby Whithouse's last script couldn't even match any of his other scripts, as when we got to that in Series 10, and I think you all know which one I'm talking about. But he still at least wrote quite a few great scripts over the years before that, for series 2, 5, 6. Yeah, he did 6, 7. It was 8 he skipped, 9, and for Torchwood as well. He did an episode of Torchwood. But series 10 was kind of a letdown. Thankfully, he did a fantastic penultimate story, and I would love to see him come back again at some point. He's also a good choice for potential showrunner after Chris Chibnall goes, and he's had some producing credits. Also, he's pretty good at acting, as we saw in Twice Upon a Time. I mean, he only had a small role, but it was a good small role. Moving on to number 3, and this is my favourite episode from Series 8, Season 34, so the 2 after this will be Series 9 or 10, and this is, of course, the final of the 4 Jamie Mathieson stories I have to mention, the final of the 3 on the list, and the 4th one being the honourable mention, as I mentioned. So the best of the Jamie Mathieson stories is, of course, Flatline, which is ironically his first. Flatline is such an incredibly imaginative sci-fi story with its own little bit of horror as well into this idea with the boneless. It's such a great and imaginative episode, and it's also really great for the creative team to flex their visual muscles with great directing and cinematography. I believe this was by Douglas McKinnon, so yeah, it's going to be great. But yeah, this one, Flatline, is such a creatively imaginative story, and it's looks really great and stunningly visualized. And also, it's actually quite fun to have the companion be like the Doctor for a bit. Yeah, Clara's a bit annoying when she does this again in Death in Heaven, and then throughout Series 9 when she's trying to be like the Doctor. But for this episode, it works pretty well, and it does allow Clara to actually do something, as opposed to be a blank character. Then again, Series 8 did try to do something with her character, so yeah, and I suppose this episode does kind of count for that. Maybe a bit of Autumn Mummy as well, and Time Heist. Although those two maybe not as much. But yeah, I think this is a really great episode, and it's definitely a very good episode for Clara as well. Whilst the Doctor gets some fun moments whilst inside the TARDIS, it's just a really clever and imaginative episode. Jamie Mathieson knocked it out of the park first time, writing-wise, release-wise, it was second. But as mentioned, every single time he's risen for the show, he's knocked it out of the park. Maybe not so much with Girl Who Died, but he certainly knocked it out of the park. Moving on to number 2, and this is my favourite episode from Series 10. And as you might have noticed, I had 4 Series 10 stories on this list back to back, and all of them were in release order. In fact, 3 of them were released in that back-to-back order. So we had The Return of Dr. Mysterio, Thin Ice, Knock Knock, and Oxygen, which were my 5th to 2nd places on my Series 10 ranking, with the latter 3 actually being broadcast back-to-back as well as being back to back on both rankings in that order. But now we come to my number 1 story from series 10 and my number 2 choice of this list, World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls. The Series 10 finale is easily the best finale since Series 1 and is one of my favourite finales overall. It's also probably my second favourite pre-regeneration story after the Day of the Doctor. So basically the penultimate story for Incarnation of the Doctor. And I think the 10th, 11th and 12th Doctors have the best 3 out of any Doctors, the pre-regeneration stories, although we get a bit more of a mix of Doctors come the regeneration and post-regeneration stories. But this is definitely up there as one of the best pre-regeneration stories. If it was the regeneration story for 12, it probably would be third overall, maybe second, depends whether I put it over Caves Androzani. I might put Caves over this one, but it would have been top 3 at territory. But sadly, it was the penultimate story instead. But it's still a fantastic penultimate story and an amazing ride. First of all, Capaldi is fucking fantastic. Pearl Mackie is amazing as Bill, and what happens to her is tragic and dark and ooh. And in the Doctor universe, this is realistic. A companion can get turned into a Cyberman. Thankfully, she gets a happy ending at the very end and goes off with Heather and as puddle creatures. But until then, it's a dark and nasty way for the companion to be killed. And also, leading up to that, she had to wait for the Doctor for about 10 years, only to be missed by a few hours and be upgraded. It's a great story. It's great having the two miss each other and having this dark, nasty way for the character to go out before getting a more happy ending at the very end. Nardole has his character arc wrapped up, going from the comedic comic relief character from Husbands of a Song, then starting to show more maturity in Return of Doctor Mysterio as he's hanging out with the Doctor a lot, and then helping him with the Vault in early series 10, and then over the series he gets more serious and mature, and ultimately we come to this episode where his character arc comes to a completion as he goes off to do what the Doctor would do and help these humans escape the Cybermen. This is also probably my favourite performance of Michelle Gomez as Missy, except for the stuff at the start where she's all dab and wink and all the Moffat stuff that he was trying to get out before we got to the more interesting story. And this is easily the best portrayal of John Sims' Master, with John Sims' best performance in the show, or at least for TV anyway. And also he does a really good job in Masterful, though I probably still take this Master portrayal and performance over that, but Masterful would be second for him. Regarding him, Michelle Gomez is also fantastic in that audio as well. In fact, she's really great in that. I might review this at some point. I'll listen to it again, but I've already listened to it, but I was waiting for the box set itself, but I might listen to it again before doing a review. And also the Mondasian Cyberman. Whilst I don't like the fact that it was regarded as Mondasian Cyberman and not just Cybermen, and I'm not too keen about them being able to fly. I mean, the 2013 ones, yeah, but the other ones not so much. Heck, even the 2013 ones were an issue. I'm not so keen on them flying and the stomping sound that the Mondasian ones have to have, and the fact that they only use the 2006/11 designs and the 2013 designs when they do upgrade, and they don't do any of the other classic ones, and you could have had a whole bunch of Cyberman Easter eggs. But that being said, they're still fantastic villains in this story, and they're still pretty creepy, and they have the scariness and the realism of being turned into a Cyberman. That is great, and we capture what was so scary about them to begin with, and the loss of humanity to becoming emotionless cyborgs. Brilliant. And now, number 1, the greatest 12th Doctor story of all is from Series 9 or Season 35, and, well, I think you all know what this is. I think 90% of the fan base would consider this the best 12th Doctor story, or at the very least up there, as well as also the best of Series 9, or again, up there. It is, of course, the masterpiece known only as Heaven Sent. This episode is fantastic. It's the Doctor trapped in this one place, having to get over the grief of Clara being dead, and trying to avoid this veiled creature, and trying to find a way out. That's it. You don't need anything else. It's simple, it's effective, it's character drama, it's getting over the death of your best friend in the previous story before moving on to something more big and should have been but wasn't exciting in the next episode. It's perfect. It's a brilliant character story. I can understand maybe some people not getting into it because it's very different to what we get. It's a more character-driven story, and that we're stuck in mostly one place. Although it's nice to go to different spots of that one place. And there's only really two main characters throughout, maybe a bit of Clara and that one boy at the end. But it's still a fantastic episode to focus, and also Peter Capaldi is at his absolute best. Not that any of his performances afterwards were bad. It's just that whilst he was absolutely fantastic, this is still his best, even if he came very close with other performances, like with the finale and Twice Upon a Time. But this is still his best performance, and he's just absolutely amazing. And if any Doctor can carry one individual episode on their own, it would be Capaldi. Maybe also Tom Baker, maybe also David Tennant, but Capaldi's probably the one who'd achieve it the most. And here we go, we got it, and it's spectacular and amazing, and it's wonderful. And Rachel Tallahassee, this is her best directed episode. Stephen Moffat, this is his best written episode since Day of the Doctor, and it's just so magnificent. It's amazing. There's just one problem. It was fucking completely ruined in the next episode. But if we ignore that and just focus on this episode as it is on its own, the only issues are kind of what it does tie into the story arc, the series arc. But again, that's more to do with what happens next time, as well as the Doctor saying that he didn't run away from Gallifrey because he was scared. But I don't mind an ulterior motive, but the whole stuff with the hybrid wasn't very good. So those are nitpicks based on association with the series arc. However, ignoring that, it's fucking fantastic and really enjoyable. And if you're not quite sold on it, I'd recommend checking out again on its own and just experience it as a Capaldi solo adventure. And yeah, it's a pretty great story. It's basically Capaldi's Dead the Assassin. And Dead the Assassin is a fantastic story. So yeah, fantastic story to be like, and ultimately ending up fantastic. So that's my top 10 12th Doctor stories ranking. Before we wrap up, a quick reminder, number 10, Time Heist from Series 8 or Season 34. Number 9, The Return of Dr. Mysterio, the 2016 Christmas special, which I've counted as part of Series 10 or Season 36. Numbers 8, 7, and 6 are all from Series 10 or Season 36, and they are Thin Ice, Knock Knock, and Oxygen, respectively. Number 5 is Mummy on the Orient Express from Series 8. Number 4 was Under the Lake and Before the Flood from Season 35 or Series 9. Number 3 was Flatline from Series 8. Number 2 was Welcome Up in Time and The Doctor Falls from Series 10. And number 1 from Series 9, it is, of course, Heaven Sent. So that's it from my top 10 12th Doctor stories. And quick thoughts on the 12th Doctor and Peter Capaldi. Peter Capaldi is fucking amazing as the 12th Doctor, and especially in Series 9 and 10. He's still kind of getting to grips with the character early in Series 8, but by the time of that series' ending, he's brilliant. He's absolutely amazing. And then Series 9, even though the characterization isn't very good in parts of that series, he is on fire, and he stays on fire until the end of his tenure, with Heaven Sent and World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls being his best performances, as well as his best episodes. Characterization for the 12th Doctor, I thought it was an interesting to take the Doctor in a more darker, more serious and more alien direction after the 11th Doctor, but perhaps they went a bit too far earlier on to begin with. And then when they tried to tone it down a bit, they went too far in toning it down and made the 12th Doctor too much like the 11th Doctor, but in a bad way. It was too much, too cringy and too down with the kids and trying to be cool and modern. And as Dimmy Looming put it in their review of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, the Capaldi's Doctor was kind of turned into a bad parody of Matt Smith's Doctor. And whilst there were points in Series 9 where it did improve, there were also points where it went to around a similar level. I would cite the Dalek two-parter at the start of the series and the Zygon two-parter as being the weakest of the characterization of the 12th Doctor. He's just trying to be cool and down with the kids, playing his guitar in a tank. Hello, it's Dr. Disco. How can I help you? And part of the speech he did have in Zygon Inversion, he did treat it like a game. For most of that speech, he was very serious, but then there was that bit where he was pretending to be an American game show host for no reason. He was certainly a lot more serious in the final 3 episodes of the series, which, along with some of the other episodes, did kind of help. And then come the first episode of Class, where he made a guest appearance in, he was there. He had the 12th Doctor had properly arrived. I mean, I did like what he had in Series 8, but what we saw in Heaven Sent and what we saw in the first episode of Class, and then in Series 10, that was it. That was the 12th Doctor we were waiting for. That was the 12th Doctor we know and love, or at least on reflection, and can ignore the bits we were not so keen on. And yeah, I loved how the 12th Doctor was like in Class and in Series 10. He was just fantastic. I actually beamed when he turned up in Class. That was a fantastic moment. I'll do revisitation reviews on Class as well after doing Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures and K9. But yeah, he was amazing in that. And from Return of Doctor Mysterio onwards, that was the characterization of the 12th Doctor that I fell in love with. Unfortunately, the 12th Doctor probably won't go too high in my ranking. If it was exactly like how he was in Series 10 throughout the entire tenure, or if I was just going on Series 10 12th Doctor, he probably would be top 3 easily. But unfortunately, as he is, he's kind of more in the middle. But yeah, he was absolutely amazing in Series 10. Thin Ice was able to show a nice balance between the kind of more darker, serious Doctor when he was unable to save the boy and just went for the sonic screwdriver. But then we saw the more softer, kinder side of him when he was telling a story to the other kids afterwards. That's the 12th Doctor I love. He can be dark and serious, but he can also have a heart and be nice. And as Capaldi loved interacting with younger fans, there were parts throughout that series where the 12th Doctor would certainly get along with younger people and children. In fact, that even went as far back as Series 8 with the Caretaker and with In the Forest of the Night. The 12th Doctor had a great rapport with children. I like the 12th Doctor. Unfortunately, his characterization is a bit all over the place, but once you get to Series 10, even once you get to Heaven Sent even, that's where we got it, and it sticks like that onwards, at least from Return of Doctor Mysterio onwards, plus the Class appearance. It's just fantastic. And the Series 8 one just need to iron out a few kinks, and yeah, I think we would have had it, and that's where we got with Series 10. It's just a shame we had to go through a bit of a bumpy area in Series 9, and also a little bit early on in Series 8. But regardless, 12th Doctor is still a brilliant Doctor, and the Series 10 12th Doctor is one of the best. It's just a shame that was A, just for one series, and B, Capaldi didn't stay on for a 4th series. I'm sure Chris Chibnall would have done him justice. I know some people might argue that. So, to wrap up this video, Peter Capaldi, thank you for being the 12th Doctor. Oh look, I've got a 12th Doctor mug, as many of you would already know. But yeah, thank you, Peter Capaldi, for being the 12th Doctor. You were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So ladies, gentlemen, and those who identify as other, thank you so much for watching this ranking, and thank you for watching the 12th Doctor reviews, or revisitation reviews in the case of the Series 10 ones. And that's it for the 12th Doctor's era, and we've done 36 seasons of Doctor Who, done or redone in the revisitation cases. We're on the home stretch now as we arrive at our current Doctor, the 13th Doctor, played by the lovely Jodie Whittaker. And we will be starting her reviews soon with Series 11, Episode 1, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. That's next, and that'll be the start of the final 2 series to do these reviews, or revisitation reviews in these cases, on those, and then we'll be arriving at Season 39, or Series 13, later in the year. Yay! So I'll see you guys next time for The Woman Who Fell to Earth revisitation review. Until then, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.